I slammed the door in my ex-wife's face when she tried to visit with her child from a previous relationship and expressed her want to be a family again. She had cheated on me and left our family years before. To set the scene, my ex-wife Olivia, who is 36 years old, and I, a 37-year-old guy, first crossed paths in our mid-20s, when I was around 24 years old. It was through our shared employer that we first crossed paths. We were married after being together for 2 years, and our 2 girls, who are now 9 and 7 years old, were born into the world within 3 years of the union. Despite my assurances that I would support her decision to abort the second pregnancy, she chose not to do so because it was unanticipated and she was unhappy about it. I was careful not to force her to do anything she was not comfortable with. We were still madly in love and had a wonderful relationship after having our first kid. However, with the second pregnancy, that changed. She started picking on either our oldest child or me all the time and became quite irritated and cranky. After trying to accept this new Olivia, I rationalized my feelings by saying it was all in my hormones. My daughter and I learned to be very cautious around her since we were under the impression that things would improve with time. However, they have only gotten worse. She was meant to be a stay-at-home mom, but I was taking care of everything. She voluntarily left her job when our first child was born and took care of our eldest and all household chores while I worked. That is, until she became pregnant again. She was too exhausted to take care of the kids and the housework when she was pregnant, so we hired a housekeeper. Since my income was insufficient at the time, I consented even though it was marginally above our budget. To spare Olivia any trouble, especially during her pregnancy, I consented to employ a housekeeper. On the day following the birth of our second daughter, I had anticipated that she would resume her role as primary caregiver for the house and children. I want to add that I was never one of those men who would simply sit around the house and do nothing when I got home from work. Despite my exhaustion from work, I did all I could to lend a hand. I assumed that when our younger daughter was born, she would recover quickly and we could get back to our regular life. However, she remained unchanged for a few months. She still wouldn't do a thing around the house and was just as grumpy and irritated as before. Instead of going out, she would stay home and watch TV all day. She would periodically pay our neighbor to take the kids to the park, but she never played with them herself. I apologize if it comes out as bitter, but I was working non-stop and was really unhappy about it. Back at home, she wouldn't even bother to conduct the simplest of tasks. The cost of hiring a maid to attend to all of my domestic needs, cooking, cleaning, etc., was also becoming a significant financial burden. Not only did I have to pay for everything else, but I also wanted to put money aside for our daughter's future. Because Olivia flat out refused to provide me a hand, it was quickly becoming an insurmountable obstacle. I finally determined we couldn't continue like this after almost 6 months after our younger daughter's birth and had to have a conversation with Olivia. I requested my parents keep our girls for a day since I knew we were going to have a tough conversation. They agreed. I sat Olivia down that day and explained to her that I understood she was exhausted after carrying 2 children, but that I needed her assistance and cooperation. I told her that paying a housekeeper was getting out of hand and that I wanted her to follow her promise and resume helping out around the house so that we could cut the housekeeper's pay. The moment she heard about it, she shot it down, claiming she was too preoccupied with the kids to help out around the home. And that I needed to stop blaming her for my money problems and start working. I attempted to convey the idea that I was already giving it my all, but that she needed to match my efforts if we wanted our marriage to succeed. I also mentioned that she wasn't adequately caring for the children. Simply said, from what I gathered, she would invite them to sit down with her in front of the TV and watch trashy reality shows for hours on end. The housekeeper casually brought this up in our chat once. She went into a huff and accused me of spying on her via the housekeeper, so I knew it was a bad idea to bring it up. After that, she launched into an irate diatribe against me, declaring that she would no longer tolerate being treated poorly and being made to do all the work while I did nothing more than sit at my computer for a few hours each day. I was supposed to be the breadwinner, she said. Therefore it was my responsibility that I couldn't afford a cleaner. It was unfortunate that I had to grovel to her for assistance. Everything she said was completely irrational, and she was clearly trying to find an excuse to seem as if her day of inactivity had been perfectly normal. I was the one who was insane for thinking she would pitch in and help out around the house. We got into a huge argument, and she accused me of being unworthy of a lady like her. My revenge was to accuse her of being a sluggish cow who had failed miserably at being a wife and a mother. Our eldest daughter was terrified of her, and now she was failing miserably at both roles. She became really angry after hearing that comment and shoved me forcefully. I tumbled off the coffee table, injuring myself and breaking the glass as I shattered it. I was taken to the emergency room in a hurry as she sobbed and apologized to me. I no longer trusted Olivia, and I was lucky that the injuries I sustained were minor. My back was the only affected area, but I could have damaged myself much worse. Since I couldn't put my faith in her among children, I told her she had to go. You never know when she could lose her cool and inflict harm on them. While Olivia was there, I instructed my parents to watch our girls. She protested and promised she would make sure it didn't happen again for a week, but by that point, I no longer trusted her. By the weekend's end, we had settled on her spending time with her parents and attending treatment after she pleaded with me not to file for divorce. She couldn't come back to live with us until a doctor gave her a clean bill of health. She was determined to improve herself, which meant that something was clearly wrong with her. Happy people don't behave like that. I also wanted my girls to have a mother figure in their lives, so I decided against getting a divorce at that time and instead agreed to give our marriage another go. Even though we were attending marriage therapy sessions while we were living apart, it was all for naught when she betrayed me. While Olivia remained with her parents, my parents came to live with me so they could be closer to our girls. For a time, it appeared like things were improving during our weekly marriage counseling meetings. She had been dealing with postpartum depression, but her therapist assured me that things were looking up. Her symptoms included a newfound inability to control her wrath. Unfortunately, things escalated out of hand when she shoved me, which served as a wake-up call for us both. After nearly a year of this, I finally gave in and let her visit our children under my supervision at the 6-month milestone. To my delight, she was reverting back to her former self. At last, we felt that things were looking up and that we could actually pull this off. However, without warning, she abruptly quit attending our counseling sessions. Even though she ceased speaking to me, I was able to gauge her improvement because of the updates her therapist provided. For weeks, I attempted to reason with her about it, but she would ignore me and insist on spending time alone. I decided to pay her a visit at her parents' residence after she avoided me for about 3 months. Her parents didn't approve of me and held me responsible for their daughter's irrational behavior, so I refrained from doing it sooner. So, she had informed me that it would be wise not to pay her a visit while she was still living with them. She said that doing so would just cause unnecessary drama. Since she had been behaving distantly and ignoring counseling sessions, I disregarded that restriction and went to see them nevertheless. It was perplexing since she would occasionally turn up, but she always seemed disinterested. No matter how many times I attempted to communicate with her, in person, over the phone, or via text, she insisted that everything was okay. However, her actions made it clear that she was concealing something from me. I was under the impression that she would be home when I visited her parents' place, but she wasn't. I went to her parents to find out where she was, but they slammed the door in my face and said they couldn't tell me. I chose to contact Olivia while standing outside her parents' house since I had a nasty feeling about it and could tell they were enjoying it. I became increasingly worried and tried contacting her many times, but she never picked up. Finally, I decided to sneak inside the house by myself. Knowing that her parents often left the kitchen door open, I made my way to the backyard to see if I could find Olivia swinging there. Luckily, I didn't have to. Unfortunately, I couldn't see him making out with anyone, so she sat with her back to me. Even though it's been a while, the memory of seeing them is still vivid. Why? Because that was the worst hour of my life, and I still can't get it out of my head. I had already begun to go back to my car when Olivia turned around. The man she was making out with quickly pulled back upon. Seeing me, she managed to catch up to me and attempted to intervene, but I was too shocked to hear a word she said. She reached out to touch me, but I firmly resisted and warned her not to. As a result, she refrained, and I resumed my journey home in my car. I immediately began to ban her on all of my social media platforms upon returning home, preventing her from having any opportunity to explain. I then informed my parents that I wanted them to seek legal representation on my behalf and alert them about what I had observed during my visit to Olivia's parents' house. It wasn't until our divorce settlement meeting with the court-appointed mediator that I saw or heard from her. By that time, I had emotionally shut down and was essentially acting like a robot to support my girls. Even when I learned that Olivia was ending her parental rights, I felt no emotion since she had already decided she no longer wanted to be our mom. I saw her the other day with this guy. Let's call him Marcus. And she expressed her desire to be with him. Although they had drifted apart after high school, she supposedly fell in love with him after reconnecting with him when she moved back home with her parents. He had been her childhood pal. Even though she was a married lady with 2 children, her parents had been correct in their assessment of her when they saw her making out with him in their garden since they shared this view. Apparently, they were delighted that Olivia was finally putting herself and her happiness first, as if she were ever capable of anything else, and they had always hoped that she would end up with Marcus. She insisted on qualifying for alimony throughout the divorce proceedings, despite the fact that she had been unfaithful to me. It took some time, but my lawyer and I battled tooth and nail to ensure that she would receive nothing from the divorce. After all, I had been the one footing the bill for all of our expenses for so long, while she did nothing more than sit around and watch TV. It has been 5 long years since the divorce was finalized, and we were successful in our aim to ensure that she received nothing. I knew I couldn't give in during the divorce's last months because I had a responsibility to care for my daughter, who had no one else to turn to for support. I can't express how much I appreciate my parents' unwavering support and assistance while I balance work with taking care of my kids. Even though I thought getting a divorce was the worst thing that could have happened to me 5 years ago, I'm grateful that it happened today. For the simple reason that if I hadn't left Olivia, I doubt I would be where I am now. Since then, everything has worked out for the best, and I couldn't be happier. I no longer have to worry about spending money on anybody other than my girls and myself, thanks to my improved salary, so we were able to move into a larger house. I also get occasional visits from my folks, who reside nearby. My friends adore me, and my girls couldn't be happier. Everything is falling into place for me right now, and I couldn't be more grateful to the cosmos for that. Until Olivia reappeared a few days ago, that is. I was ready to head out the door for work since the kids were in school. When I opened it, I saw Olivia standing outside with a boy at her side. I realized this had to be Olivia's son because the youngster couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old. I was still trying to digest the shock of seeing her standing at my door when she broke down in tears and announced her intention to apologize and make amends. She expressed to me her readiness to be a family once more and to give our marriage another go. It was unbelievable to me that she had returned after all these years and was now willing to give our marriage another go, as if the choice were entirely in her hands. I didn't want to become involved in whatever this was, so I decided in an instant to close the door and ignore her. However, I had already informed her that this was no longer her family. The day she cheated on me with Marcus, I ceased to be her husband. The divorce was only a formality. She also lost the right to call us her family since she had relinquished custody of her kid. I then instructed her to leave my property and locked the door behind me after saying that, because of the small child, I restrained myself from cursing her out, even though I was really upset. After I shut her out of my house, I could still hear her sobbing outside for a few minutes. However, I chose to disregard her cries and proceeded to work until I was sure nobody was around. I did my best to avoid dwelling on the thought since doing so would only serve to undermine my determination, something I could not afford. I nearly managed to dispel the memory that Olivia had ever arrived at my place. My parents called me the second I got home from work, demanding to know why I had rejected her. According to what they informed me, Olivia was so distraught that she phoned them after I rejected her and closed the door in her face. Olivia had contacted my parents about a month ago, and this had been planned for a long time, according to my parents. They informed me that they were the ones who had given her my new address and instructed her to come see me since she was going through a divorce from Marcus and finally had an opportunity to make amends with me. Since my girls were in need of a mother and Olivia was the best possible choice, my parents felt it was about time that I gave some consideration to my children. It was their decision to provide her a second opportunity without first asking me if I would be good with it, and they informed her where to find me and what to say to me, so I became very angry with them since it was not their job to forgive her. Their careless move may have had disastrous consequences if the children had remained at home. They had helped me out during my divorce by watching the kids, so I had to scold them, but they still wouldn't admit they were wrong. Even today, on occasion, they do take care of the kids, and they still think it's my decision whether or not to make amends with Olivia. Still, I couldn't deny them their inherent autonomy in determining what was best for the kids. Since they were ultimately my girls and not theirs, I found it absurd that they believed that. Although I held them in high esteem and will be eternally grateful for their support during my divorce, I do not believe it was their duty to allow Olivia to re-enter my life. They accused me of being selfish and out of line for not giving Olivia another opportunity after we got into an argument, but I was informed otherwise. Despite my reminders that she had signed away her rights, they insisted that they had done their research and were certain that she had changed for the better and deserved to be involved in my daughters' lives. They took exception to my belief that they would endanger my girls or myself and blamed me for destroying their life because I was too conceited to realize how much they needed their mother. I have given this a lot of consideration over the past several days, and I still don't feel like I was being selfish or acting inappropriately. To Ida, since you didn't give my ex-wife another opportunity to be a mother? First update. It's been almost 1 week since Olivia and her kid showed up at my door, and I only just now learned the truth about her connection to my parents. It's so upsetting that I'm at a loss for words and am still finding it hard to comprehend it all on my own. It's unbelievable that they have all turned on me so casually. They had apparently been in constant contact with her and were the ones who had informed her of my new address. They kept in touch with her after the divorce, even though I had distanced myself from her, because they thought she would change her mind. Rarely, perhaps once a month, would they exchange words. But that was plenty to make me feel deceived. Upon receiving the divorce papers, Marcus coerced Olivia into signing away her rights. He then presented her with an ultimatum: either leave her family and start a new life with him, or she could stay in contact with her children and fight for custody, but ultimately, she would have to leave him behind. My folks said that was a tough decision for her to make. However, she ultimately decided to leave her existing family behind and start a new life with Marcus. Olivia wished to maintain intimate contact with her children, so she called my parents soon after I filed for divorce to inform them of her position and beg for their assistance. According to what she had informed them, she was cornered by us too and would be unable to see her children regardless of what I did. Why? Because Marcus told her to just leave the kids alone while I was battling for full custody with the option to visit with supervision. The specifics of our divorce and her track record of having trouble managing her anger made it quite unlikely that she would even win partial custody, even if she fought for it and went against Marcus. Therefore, she felt that battling for custody was pointless. She had a genuine shot at losing Marcus as well as custody of our girls if she chose to fight. She visited with my parents privately and essentially asked them to help her keep in touch with her daughters and serve as a mediator between them, and that's when my dad stepped in. After signing away her rights, she knew she would no longer be eligible for monitoring or even visiting rights. My folks, though, would, and they intended to take advantage of it. By letting Olivia meet our girls behind my back, they managed to pull this off and deceived me for quite some time. They did this because they related to Olivia's predicament and understood that they couldn't morally separate a mother from her children. Nevertheless, their conscience was unaffected by years of betraying their own son. Their story was that they would always welcome Olivia over to spend time with them whenever I dropped off our children at their place. My kids were so coy about telling me they were meeting their mom that my parents would bribe them with food and gifts to remain quiet. Whenever I would inquire as to their activities when visiting their grandparents, my girls would invariably report playing games with my grandparents and their buddy. It turns out that my parents instructed my girls to tell me that if I wanted to know about their day, I should ask their mother, rather than my presumed acquaintances who were my parents' friends. Because they are only children, I was able to forgive my girls even though the idea that they had lied to me was unbelievable to me. Not to mention that my dad and Olivia had successfully coerced and threatened them into being silent. My girls broke down in tears and claimed they were afraid God would punish them if they informed me they had been meeting their mother secretly after I found out the truth from my parents. Consequently, my parents and Olivia must have been deeply convinced that there would be severe repercussions if they revealed the truth to me, which is why they had been very evasive and clandestine throughout. The fact that I never once inquired as to which of my parents' friends my girls were hanging out with made me feel like a bad parent, since it could have been anybody. If it had been someone less deadly than Olivia, I would never have known. But now that I'm seeking a restraining order against everyone involved, I'm going to stop it. My parents emailed me to tell me the truth a few days after our argument, so I already have written evidence of this. The email, they thought, would show me how much Olivia wanted to keep being a mother to her girls while still keeping the so-called love of her life. And I thought it would help me forgive everyone, But it only made me understand that everyone here was a small-town liar and that I could no longer trust anyone. It's strange that Olivia had to meet our children clandestinely, like it was a criminal, after signing away her parenting rights. Everything stemmed from Marcus's desire for her to maintain no touch with her biological family. In addition to being her one true love, he was now divorcing her, thus it was all for naught. Even though they had a son together, my parents say that Marcus no longer had anything to do with her or their baby due to a job offer and his impending move in a few months. Their long-running argument stemmed from Olivia's resumption of employment and her reluctance to uproot their son, who had just begun kindergarten here. Everything reached a boiling point 3 months ago when Marcus informed her he was quitting the job and leaving. Being a family man was no longer appealing to him since he felt he couldn't be bothered to give up his future and happiness for the sake of his wife's happiness. Although the intention was for me to feel sorry for Olivia, the only thing it accomplished was to give me the impression that justice had been done. The restraining order petition was filed after I spoke with my attorney. Also, my girls and I have had a serious talk about it, and I've already informed them that from this point on, they won't be seeing their mom or grandparents. We will continue to attend therapy sessions in the hopes of resolving our issues, and they appear to be fine with it for the time being. For the simple reason that I anticipate great difficulty in dealing with this, which has likely been a significant challenge for them during the last 5 years. But the wait is over now. Update 2. Hello everyone. Your care and encouragement are tremendously appreciated. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of the kind words and well wishes that my girls have received. Olivia's and my parents are both required to appear in court in the coming days after receiving restraining orders. Because I have banned them from every single platform and warned my friends not to communicate with them, I have no idea how they feel about anything that has happened. In addition to working from home for a few days, I have increased the protection surrounding my property. I had also informed my daughter's school administration about the matter. At first, I was going to keep them home from school for a few days, but I changed my mind since I didn't want Angel and my parents to interfere with their education. Teachers are now expected to supervise them closely and ensure that no one other than me collects them after school. Because I know they will attempt it, I'm doing all I can to keep them from reaching us. It has been going well thus far, and I'm crossing my fingers that they remain far after we have the restraining order. Post 3. Hello there. I apologize in advance for the brevity of this post, but we have obtained a restraining order that will ensure that 3 insane individuals cannot get near me or my girls for the next 5 years. Unless, of course, they would like to confront dire repercussions. Since they were quite irate in my last encounter, I have decided to maintain the current level of protection. I do not want to take any chances. Our family therapy sessions are becoming more frequent, and I have faith that we will achieve great strides in the next several months with the help of my girls and myself. We have accomplished a great deal thus far. At this point in my life, my only want is for my girls to find happiness. Because of this, we ask that you continue to offer us your warmest wishes.